Another Crab's Treasure. Who's played it?
Me,
Greg Miller,
Andy,
Snowbike
and
Mike,
Greg and Mike.
Andy Cortez. Have all three of you beat this game?
Fuck no.
Yes.
No.
Andy Cortez is the only person to beat the game. Andy Cortez, what are your thoughts and what would you give it on the Kind of Funny scale?
I would give Another Crab's Treasure a 4 out of 5 grade. I did kind of wonder about halfway through whether this was like a 3 out of 5 or not. I think the game, and that sounds like a lot more negative. I don't want you to feel like, oh, it takes me that long for the game to get good. I think the game just like continually gets more and more impressive as it goes on. And it starts off with some pretty neat boss fights. But what Another Crab's Treasure is, it's a small indie studio named Aggro Crab, and they set out to make a Soulslike, like just a straight up Souls game. It's adorable. It's very cartoony looking visually, but it can be pretty brutal in its approach to trying to emulate the Souls feel. I think it's a little friendlier in ways that that Souls games definitely weren't early on, because we've just learned from quality of life changes what the player prefers, and in certain moments there's not going to be any enemies that are like backstabbing you from around the wall or like dropping on you and kind of surprising you out of nowhere. There's no fall damage, so your little crab can just kind of float in the water and fall from great heights and not worry about dropping from that big ledge that you were kind of adventuring on. Boss fights are super challenging. I already mentioned that it's gentler than most Souls games. You can run away from a lot of enemies as well, and kind of just float away if you're kind of worried about certain enemies, and maybe you're low on health and you don't want to lose your microplastics. And the microplastics in this game are your souls, essentially. You collect a bunch of just microplastics because this game's all about an ocean that is just filled with trash and garbage. And I enjoyed the sort of takes that the game has story-wise, and then it kind of evolves a bit more, and I was really impressed and had a great time with what it was doing with characters and stories. And there's some pretty captivating conversations that I really enjoyed with these very cartoony looking crabs. I'd say it's voiced maybe 10 to 15% of the time. A lot of the rest of it is just little dialogue between these characters that are not voiced. The final boss, I thought I fought the final boss about 5 different times in this game. It's got a lot of those moments.
Was that good?
Yes and no. Because anytime that would happen, I'd be hit with that sort of initial like, oh, we're still going, huh? Like, really thought this was going to end. And then I'd immediately kind of be interested in what was next. And I think the game does some really cool stuff later on that was really surprising and unexpected that I don't want to get into spoilers about. But overall, I was just very, very impressed by this game, and I've thought about it quite a bit since. I will say that the variety and creativity in the level design gets more and more impressive as you go on. I think it starts off pretty simplistic and like, here's an open world. And later on in the game, it gets a bit more like, take all these different winding paths, and now you're finding more treasures over here, more secrets. I think that the game is pretty buggy. The game is broken in a lot of different spots, where I even had a full boss fight break on me, and it essentially skipped the boss fight. I've had a lot of moments where you fall through a wall when you get hit by somebody, or you fall through the floor, and you're just kind of, it's an endless thing. And in the options, there's an option to die instantly, which is usually like in a lot of early access games, you'll see like a get unstuck button to maybe you're stuck in geometry. So I got stuck in geometry quite a bit. I was knocked through the world in a lot of different moments. One of the boss fights I was looking forward to that came out during the demo was completely skipped past for me, because I got hit by the boss and I got knocked through the ground, and I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to see this. Haha, funny. That happens in a lot of games where you're just kind of seeing underneath the world. And then as I respawn, it said pollution scoured, or whatever it is it says whenever you kill a boss. And I was like, oh, weird. And then I suddenly got a bunch of like rewards for it. And when I got back there, the boat that the boss is sitting on, the boat's gone. So the boat seemed to have like despawned, and the boss, I guess, just fell to its death.
It might be a Metal Gear Solid 3 type thing. You know what I mean? You go down
it very
there,
well
shit
could be,
happens.
but I did beat it during the demo, which is fascinating. So that kind of stuck. There was a decent amount of moments in that I don't think is like easy to just kind of brush past, because it did feel like this game could have had a lot more time in the oven cooking with QA and focusing on these bugs. Combat, I would say, is like better than most cheap attempts at like making a Souls game, but still not quite on the level of like Lies of P or Stellar Blade, as what we were mentioning today when we reviewed that. I think that the parry timing is kind of weird. The parry feels weird in general. It's played opposite to what most Souls games are, where you normally tap the button to throw out your shield. And in this case, you're a little crab who's going around and picking up pollution and trash on the ground, and you make those pieces of trash your shell. And I think it's really creative in that sense, where a lot of the different shells come with different passive abilities and different weights to them. You can get like a small, medium, or large shell, and they all have different categories. Some have more shield than others, but when you have that shell on, you can hold the LB button, which is like your block, and you're going to want to be blocking a lot in this game. It's going to serve you greatly, because in a lot of these boss fights, they have a lot of just extra shells lying around. So you want to be blocking as much as you can, and then when that shell breaks, you can go grab another shell.
Do I want to not be targeting them? Do I want to be like free of the target so I can run away quicker? And that's what I was using on my boss encounter.
I mean, I target quite a bit in this game, but I did run into several moments where I'm getting stuck in the target.
That first boss, man, like, you know what I mean? It would be that thing of like, he breaks the shell. I'm like, all right, I know I need to get one, but I just couldn't get away from him fast enough.
I think one difficult thing is the camera. I was having a lot of issues with the camera where I'm used to locking on in Souls games, and if an enemy does a weird thing, it doesn't feel too unnatural how the camera's going to react to the enemy moving. But there's a lot of moments in here where my shit's just spinning. I'm like, where am I right now, you know? I did run into quite of like, I felt like those moments were pretty annoying, you know, to get kind of caught in an area. You're like, oh, I'm dying because of this. I died in a couple of other boss fights just due to random bugs too, where I'd get hit in a certain spot and it would just like insta kill me, and where it shouldn't have happened, and the whole screen, like, there's no UI anymore. Yeah, I think the parry's kind of weird, but once you kind of get used to hitting it right beforehand, you go into the shell, then you burst out, and the bursting out is what repels the enemy back in that moment. Fast travel's great. I think it's, you know, pretty helpful in a lot of those situations where you just want to go back to the main story hub and, you know, level up things, talk to the blacksmith. I wish that the character's main weapon was like a bit more important in a sense. You find like a fork on the ground, and that becomes your melee weapon, and that'd be fine. It, like, for me, story wise or lore wise, if you were just picking up a bunch of pieces of trash on the ground and using them as weapons, like maybe a popsicle stick or like a spork, which is higher damage, but there's none of that. You essentially have just this fork this whole way, and you can upgrade it at the blacksmith, who like makes it stronger if you find certain items. And like in Hollow Knight, you do that where you have your needle as your main weapon, and you can upgrade the needle, and it may change visually or aesthetically in some certain ways, but the fork here just kind of always stayed the fork, which I'm fine with, but I'd be a lot more okay with that if I was able to pick up other melee items on the ground. So I was kind of let down by like the lack of lore there. I think that's like, I understand that games have budgets and you can't just make a bunch of, you know, items equipable on the ground.
Looking for the perfect gift to celebrate the moms in your life? Aura frames are beautiful Wi-Fi connected digital picture frames that allow you to share and display unlimited photos. It's super easy to upload and share photos via the Aura app, and if you're giving Aura as a gift, you can even personalize the frame with preloaded photos and memories. How do I, Greg Miller from Kinda Funny, know so much about Aura? because I just gave Jen one for her birthday. I used the QR code on the box to preload it with photos of her and Benny, and when she booted it up for the first time, she got to see a sweet little message from me. I like this frame so much that I am actually legitimately buying one for my mother for Mother's Day. From grandmothers to new mothers, aunts, and even friends in your life, every mom loves an Aura frame. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $30 off plus free shipping for their best-selling frame. That's auraframes.com. Use code KINDAFUNNY at checkout to save. And Mom, if you see this before you get your Aura frame for Mother's Day, please act surprised.
I'm just scrolling through my notes here. I'm trying to see what else I got
right now. But we made all these shells. The shells.
Yeah, there's so many damn shells on the ground that you can equip, which are really cool. And you can tell that's where a lot of the time was put into development-wise. And I really appreciated and enjoyed those aspects from it. I know I've been sounding way more negative than positive, but I still enjoyed a lot of the boss fights. I enjoyed the music quite a bit. And yeah, I wasn't expecting the story. I think the game may have been like more of a 3 out of 5 for me if those story and character moments weren't
funny.
there.
It's funny and it's
got a great sense
right?
of humor.
Krill's a cool character. I liked who he was, or they are. And like, launching off into the world and the comedy, and the lone shark is a shark on a stick, talking head and stuff. Like, there's a lot to love about the world and the characters in there that I think lots of, like, for me, I if you remember from way back in the day, right, Aggro Crab made Going Under, that roguelike that was the internship roguelike that I loved so much back in the day, and we talk about on Gamescast. So I'd been watching this one forever, and to jump in and be playing it in, like, for I think every game I'll talk about today is not a traditional Greg game. This was one that drew me in, obviously, because I already knew their humor and I knew this world. And like I always talk about with Souls games, right? Like, it's not so much the challenging nature of them that I don't like. It's more the world I don't want to exist in. And this is a world I want to exist in. I loved getting off the beaten path, finding the chests, finding the new pieces of whatever it is, jumping, like you're talking about, falling, figuring out how to get over there. What do I do? All right, cool. Well, there's 3 crabs there, and there's that other swordfish thing that shoots at me. So like, how am I going to manage this battle? Like, I enjoyed that a lot.
And a lot of opportunities, like there's a lot of like great accessibility settings as well. There's the normal mode is like the hard default difficulty. Then there's
if I can jump in here, because I think this is where I'll really shine. I liked everything I saw. I'm going up against the crabs. I'm having a good time. Again, I'm like, I got this. I fucking beat Bloodborne. I know what's up. You were impressed back in the day when I did the Father Gascoigne thing and almost beat him on my first try. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like a nobody. I know what I'm doing.
Didn't Tam get summoned into your game?
That was at the end when I was like, I hate this game. Can I please stop playing? Then it was the idea though of like, all right, cool. Like, it's endless dodge, right? Like, I can get out. I can do it.
Yeah, there's no stamina meter.
This is playing the way I want to play. This is where I want to play. And then I got to that first boss, and it was such a fucking like, okay, like, it is rubbing my nose and shit. As I still don't think I understand the parry system. Like, you're talking about popping out and exploding them back. Like, I haven't figured that out yet or whatever.
Well, the first boss, there is no parry. You have no parry yet.
So that's the thing, is I was just getting my head kicked in by this fucking lobster guy. And the problem I had with it was, again, not the difficulty of it, but then the setup of it, where I was playing. This is during my sick leave. I'm playing, I'm tired, I'm enjoying the experience, and now I've ground to a halt. And as accessible as they've made it and done all these different things with it, it is, all right, cool, you've died, which means I now come back and I lower down, I hit the button, I get the shell, I walk 2 steps to the right, hey, blah, blah, whatever the guy says, to start the cutscene, skip the cutscene, fight him a little bit, okay, I died, come back down, get the shell, 2 steps out, and after like the 7th time, I was like, all right, let's go into accessibility. I go into accessibility, and it was like I could give myself more health. I could lower their health. I could.
Yeah, I got you right here. There's story mode, and there's easy mode, and then there's hard mode. Or you can do an amalgamation of all of them, and then it'll turn to custom mode, where story mode gives you the highest shell durability, reduction in damage taken, very, very low enemy health. You have extra invincibility frames when you dodge, the highest parry window. You don't lose money or the microplastics, so there's no loss in currency whenever you die and you have to go recover it. None of that happens. There's no pitfall damage, so you won't just fall into random holes. When I say there's no fall damage, I mean you can drop from a big tower and land on the ocean floor.
Because you're in the water, you're coming in slowly.
But there's still like pitfalls that are like a death if you fall into that random hole or whatever. Then easy mode changes some things, and you don't. It gives enemies a bit more health than you would have in story mode, and then hard mode is the default.
So I went in and I tweaked all this stuff, and I was like, all right, cool, like let's go. I didn't do the easy stuff. I was doing the custom stuff or whatever. And it was like I did 2 more and died. And finally I went back into accessibility. I'm like, fine. The final one is give Krill a gun. And it's the tiny ass fucking hermit crab with a Glock on his back, like a full size Glock. And you just put it down and shoot one shot, and the boss dies. And I was like, all right. Like, again, I cheated myself with the experience. I'm the screenshot of it or whatever. You know what I mean? But for getting through it tonight, to continue to enjoy the game and not hate myself, that was great. And so then I went back, dialed everything back to the normal difficulty, and played from there.
I even remember playing it at Summer Game Fest and them telling me, you want to be blocking a lot. And that's the reason why they're putting a lot of different shells that you can change into whenever your shells break during the actual boss fight. So like that's you're going to be tempted to dodge, you're going to be tempted to parry. By the end of it, I'm parrying everything because everything felt awesome, and like I got a hang of the timing pretty well. But like in those intro moments, if you do find yourself playing this game, if you wake up in a fog and you happen to be playing this game,
what am I
doing? If you do buy this game, I would say, and you're not super into Souls games and like the whole dodge and reading telegraphed attacks, block as much as possible. It's going to help you out in the early game quite a bit, and that's what all those extra shells are meant for. Like they were put there by the designers to say like, hey, you switch these out whenever yours break, and you're gonna take a lot less damage when you're blocking than when you aren't and you have like a massive hit if you didn't time your dodge right.
How long did it take you to beat?
A little under 20. I'd say like 19 and a half. It says 20.8, but I leave the controller, lying there sometimes, and I'm eating my little drumstick ice cream.
Oh God, you got to.
Delicious.
Get that little core.
Delicious.
Mike, you've been playing as well. What are your thoughts on this one?
I echo a lot of what Andy says on that one. I'd be more on the 3 side, but I am early. I left the first open area, which is about 3 bosses, is what you'll encounter. And yeah, with Andy, what he's saying about the shells is I love what they do in all the boss arenas where they encourage you to grab new shells, use up that durability, and let it break. But I like the abilities that they add onto the shell. So each shell has its own unique ability that you can call upon, and it will do different things, right? I love the soda pop that has the fizzy bubbles that will add damage onto an opponent when it comes near that area, kind of like a landmine situation. I like the sriracha bottle where I spin and I can get out of things, or I can go into someone and add a little extra damage. I really like the touch of what that is. There was something for me missing in kind of the player feedback. You can tell it's like an indie game, right? It's not that Dark Souls. We put thousands of hours of polish. There feels something off whenever I hit an enemy or I get hit, or there's that moment where it's like, I think I wasn't there, and it hit me and it killed me. And then you lead to the frustration cycle of, I've now done this boss fight 1,000 times. I've watched the same cutscene, but the world drew me in. I like the comedy. I like the fun. I like the commentary of the microplastics polluting the seafloor and what that leads to with all these characters. It's a good time, but it just missed something in that gameplay feedback that I wanted to see out of a Souls-like game.
Great, yeah. I get, like Mike was just mentioning that, and Greg was mentioning earlier as well. The dialogue and the writing is so funny, and there's so many random NPCs that have funny shit to say. There's like at one point 2 random like sea-dwelling creatures with a little piece of treasure in between them, and I walked up and I just took the treasure in front of them, and then I don't know if I triggered the dialogue, but one of them was like, "Hey Brett, you see this guy who just took our treasure?" Like, wow, what are we gonna do about that? I don't know, man. Like, such is life. Like, I forget exactly what happens, but there's like so many hilarious moments like that are totally inconsequential to the greater story, but again, just like I really enjoyed the commentary of the story initially. One of the first crabs you meet is like, "Oh yeah, our queen fucking sucks. I hate her so much." And you're like, "Oh yeah, there's a queen here, right? The Duchess. Man, I gotta pay my taxes. Hopefully I can get them erased or whatever." And the guy's like, "Oh, you're trying to get your taxes erased? Man, you must be like a little fucking leech, huh? You're just trying to like get us all to pay for your taxes."
Just a freeloader.
You immediately just like kill a dude and take his, like, you try to take his shell.
Weren't you just talking shit about the queen and how this all isn't like
he was
good?
like, "Wait, you were just talking shit about it." It's awesome. There's so many awesome moments like that. And I think like the story really goes places, and I don't think getting to those moments Like, I don't think you're suffering through bad gameplay to get to these awesome story marks. I still really enjoyed a lot of the experience. I enjoyed most of the experience for sure. And if it was less buggy, I'd probably feel a lot higher about it. But I still, it's still a great game for me, and I have been thinking about it a lot ever since.
Platforming and movement is fun too.
Oh, platforming's fantastic.
Like the floating, and he does a little swim to get away. Like Greg, I'm more of a dodge and like run away type of guy instead of a parry. And yeah, the parry's a little odd, but you'll get used to it. But the 3D platforming of the world, and then having the grappling hook to grapple onto things, and now he's moving even faster and you can float around. They do a great job of that, and it makes me want to explore the world. There's some hidden items that you can go find. It's fun to go over there and be like, oh, I'll spend an extra 10 seconds to go get that. It's worth my time.
Yeah, I have here as well, like, you talking about the platforming. From whatever happened in the demo, there may have been no change or improvement to it, but for whatever reason in the demo, I just didn't feel like I had a grasp on it necessarily. I felt like I kept on shorting my jumps in a way, and it just didn't feel
I remember
awesome.
that from our GDC demo, where I felt that was the same way for me. The platforming was difficult, whereas I felt it was great for what I've played.
I fucking loved it, and it gets even more complex, and there's going to be a lot of moments that the platforming gets you to secret spots to find a really, really awesome treasure that you can exchange for more microplastics. There's a lot of opportunities to just really, really over level and feel powerful. There's tons of shit and junk that you could just sell that's going to be in your inventory. And there's also, when we talk about a lot of these action adventure games, there's when we were talking about Stellar Blade earlier, Blessing, and like the augment system, there are 3 little augments that you can have in this game that you'll find a lot of in the world, and you can equip to give you 60% higher charge damage, or one of them just is an extra life. So if you die, you come back to life, or whatever. There's a lot of like different abilities like that, but those also give you a lot of extra microplastics. So I'd adventure for about 30, 45 minutes, come back and be like, oh shit, I can level up 3 times with all the stuff I've collected. And that just lends yourself to feeling more and more powerful. There's tons of opportunities like that if you feel like maybe it's really hard to grind in a sense. I did kind of fuck up where the game definitely told me, hey, you can't go back here. Like if you hit forward, it was like a big red dialogue box, and I was reaching for my drumstick ice cream, and I dropped my controller, and it took me past. So I could have probably leveled up like 4 times or whatever, and I just couldn't, and I was really bummed out about it, and I just suffered through the final boss fights, which were pretty tough. And once I kind of figured out the rhythms and stuff, it got a little bit more, a little bit easier to digest. But it can be brutal. Like, this game is not, if you're trying to just go for the hard difficulty, it is no pushover. I know it looks cute as hell. It's going to treat you like shit sometimes, and you're just going to have to kind of like find the right way around it.